welcome to Bingemas, a 12-part holiday special here on the Ringer Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jodi Walker, and we are on day 5 of binging this year's best original holiday offerings from Hallmark, Netflix, and more. And today that means Holiday Touchdown, a Bill's love story, a movie about how sometimes giving so much to others means that we don't know how to properly think about what we want and replace the fear of self-doubt with the alleged safety of self-preservation. And yes, this movie was written by 2 millennial women. And to break down this emotionally fraught original holiday movie, original holiday franchise, for the second consecutive Bingemas year, I could only turn to my consummate co-host, actual bestie, and real deal NFL journalist, Nora Princiotti. Merry Bingemas, how are you?
Merry Bingemas, Jodi. We're so back.
We are so back in the franchise land of Holiday Touchdown. Last year, I brought you on Bingemas for a Taylor Swift double feature that also featured a lot of football because the current state of her life. I believe we watched one truly terrible Lifetime movie about a pop star falling in love with a football player.
Correct.
And then we watched a much better movie that was not about Taylor Swift, but was about the Chiefs, called Holiday Touchdown, a Chiefs love story. And little could I have known at the time that we would be coming back next year for a Bills love story.
And you know what? So the Chiefs thing made a lot of sense last year, of course, because of Travis and Taylor Mania and because of the other movie. But here's the thing. The Bills are the most romantic team in football.
Tell me everything, because I found myself quite romanced.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills, it is a smaller market team. They are sort of this, it's not being a lovable loser, but it's always coming so close, but not really getting all the way. There was this sort of, traumatic experience that I know a friend of the pod, Andrew Daddario, has probably explained to you and I think is a big part of the psyche of a lot of Bills fans, where they went to the Super Bowl in the 90s 4 years in a row and they lost every time.
Yeah.
And especially now, I think there's a little bit of a relationship with that history because Josh Allen is, I think, universally understood to be the second best quarterback of the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs dynasty era.
And the most lovable by far.
Yes. But they are this sort of always the bridesmaid team.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also in Buffalo and it snows a lot and it's a smaller city. And, so there's just there's a romance to the Bills and their story that I think is so appropriate for this.
It did feel really appropriate. It's like the Bills really have entered the pop culture lexicon in a way that I can access a little bit because of Josh Allen, because he's become such a figure, also because he is Mrs. Haley Steinfeld, and that
Correct.
is a person that I know. As you mentioned, my beloved editor, Andrew, is a big Bills fan. I think that he actually doesn't talk to me that much about the Bills because it's likely the least professional part about him. No one seems to be able to talk about Bills Mafia without screaming or crying.
Yeah,
Two things
totally.
that I found myself wanting to do at various times in this film.
Yeah, I think the moments when Morgan, one of our central characters, is screaming at the bar about the Bills, I would say that's a very standard representation of this fandom.
Yes. I have a couple of questions about standard representation of this fandom, but before we get to those and Morgan hollering on tables, let me hit you with the Hallmark synopsis, which in fact was so long, as Hallmark wrote it itself, that it made me think
tagline was pretty lengthy.
Much like the characters, I was kind of like, what are you trying to get out in front of here? It's pretty simple. I cut a lot of lines, but I'm still going to use their copy, which is that pediatric doctor Morgan Quinn and the Bills VP of Stadium Development, which we'll get to, Gabe DeLuca have been lifelong friends, but Gabe has always held a torch for her. When Morgan learns from her Uncle Tommy that someone anonymously helped their family get by after he was drafted more than 60 years ago to the Vietnam War, she decides to find his benefactor and give her uncle a Christmas he'll always remember. Along the way, Gabe's love for Morgan deepens, and in turn, she begins to see him in a new light. But will either be daring enough to admit their feelings? The answer is barely. Like, in the nick of time.
I'm sure we'll get to it. There is so little adversity facing these characters in this movie.
It's kind of wonderful because I do think that it makes for, we are on day 5 of Bingemas, and this is our first real romance where it was leading up to a declaration of love. I just experienced on day 4 of Bingemas, Joe Jonas doing a declaration of maybe let's hang out more. And I sort of needed this in terms of love.
Sure. But although in a sense, it is kind of a let's hang out more. By the end, they frame it as a confession of love. But for a while, what we're talking about is a 6'5" guy with a white collar job telling a girl who's single and looking that he might like to go out sometime.
You're amazing at doctoring. You're an amazing doctor.
No, she is. She's really, she's really great. Yeah.
Gabe.
Yeah.
Morgan.
Are
you sweating?
Maybe it's possible. This is really dry out.
There it is. It's the perfect tree.
You're right.
He's not even telling her. He's choking near constantly. Maybe that's the Bill's through line here. I don't know, but these are the choke king and queen.
Yeah, it's very real.
They don't even get to getting interrupted kissing. They are constantly interrupted about to declare their love for one another. And they just can't do it. I thought that you were going to say that this is a 6'5" guy, not with a white collar job, with the white collar job.
Yes.
He lives in Buffalo and he is the VP of stadium development of the new Hallmark Stadium, a building or I don't know, hemisphere, a thing that I knew absolutely nothing about and found myself very attached to the idea of getting a new one by the end of this movie.
I'm not, but that's okay.
Well, we'll get into it. This 6'5" man in question, Gabe, is played by Matthew Daddario, which I like that keeps the tradition of having a Nepo sibling in these holiday touchdown movies alive.
Nepo sibling.
Last year was Joey King's sister, who I know, it's Hunter King. I mean, she is a Hallmark star in her own right, but her sister is more well-known.
And briefly appears in this film.
And does briefly appear in this film.
For reasons I can't really figure out, but...
I think ahead of the pod, Nora, you said to me, Tyler Hynes was in this movie. And hearing you have that kind of name recognition of the bad boy of Hallmark really sent a good kind of chill down my spine. How far we've come.
That's what I'm here for.
I think that they had last year's couple show up to show us that this is a universe of things. It's sort of the world we know, but not exactly the world we know.
Okay.
But these couples who are fans of these sports teams exist in this world.
Okay.
I think my most pressing question as we get into the plot of this film, which, as you mentioned, does begin with Morgan on what we're to understand is a bad date. But it opens with this pretty cute guy telling this story about how as he was walking home, he realized that something about his shoes felt weird because they weren't his shoes. I'd listen to more of that story. What's going on?
I want to know how he got the wrong shoes on. Also, she is not paying attention.
No, she's not. And she seems annoyed that he's talking because they are at a bar on game day. as it is always referred to.
They are,
in these
by the way,
films.
they're at Bar Bill, which I worked in the AFC East, which is the Bills division, for 5 years. And I would go to Buffalo for work at least once a year. And I've been a couple times for work since. Bar Bill is the best wings. Duff's and Anchor Bar are the two like slightly more touristy, more franchised ones that you hear the most often. But Bar Bill is a like real ones know. And so I commend the folks at Hallmark and the Holiday Touchdown franchise for setting our opening scene there. And I believe we returned to Bar Bill a couple of times.
And
Highly
they
recommend.
certainly like are trying to get their Buffalo facts in there. There were several food items that I did not know what they were.
Oh, a beef on weck?
Beef on weck, peanut stick.
That one I'm not familiar with peanut sticks.
I didn't Google it, but Holland Roden sure was chomping on it from the beginning of the end to that scene.
Good.
No, it looked very bready.
Really bready and really like, it looked like large biscotti to me.
but also soft. But not that soft.
Yeah.
Not the version of soft or hard that you want it to be. So this is when we, on this date at the famous Bar Bill, we see Morgan sort of expose herself as like the true fan. And I was kind of like, well, why did she accept this date on game day if she's going to be distracted?
Yeah, we do sort of have to believe that she doesn't have personal agency. Like this guy was like, I want to go out on a Sunday. And she was like, well, I have no choice but to say yes.
And there's a bit of an explainer where she's like, and this is the only day that you could go out. And it's kind of like, well, maybe toss it at this point. I don't think this guy is going to be your match. Yeah. And don't be mean to him because he likes soccer.
Yeah.
But this is coming from a non-football fan who, if I saw my date absolutely start hollering in the middle of it and, screaming and running around, I might also need to take my quick leave like he does.
Sure.
Because everybody's different.
Fair.
Luckily, she has an actual soulmate waiting in the wings. Because when she goes to her family's house the next morning, I could not make heads or tails of this family for a while.
Okay, same. I also thought you were going to say, when you said she had an absolute soulmate waiting in the wings, for a second, I thought that she and the bartender were going to have a little situation. And
totally agree.
Not at all.
I feel like Hallmark is doing this a lot more. And I don't know if it's just because everybody's in Canada and they can grab themselves a spare Hallmark hunk anytime we want to. But that guy who was the bartender is one of the main Hallmark hunks. I believe he's one of the Three Wise Men of the Three Wise Men franchise, much like Tyler Hines. And
wow, 2/3 of the Three Wise Men?
That's right.
There's a moment later where we find out that two of Mystery Mia's friends are named Angela and Pamela. And I was wondering if they were trying to get halfway to a Mambo number 5.
They also had a baby Jessica. I was like, you can't, and it wasn't a baby named Jessica. They called her baby Jessica. I was like, you can't just have a baby Jessica. This is more millennial women wrote this movie.
Totally. But it isn't. But two of the Three Wise Men that's significant.
Yeah, you're almost to a hat trick, as I think they call it in sports.
Certainly in Canada.
Certainly. So she goes to, I'm just calling it loosely her family's house because I've never seen a Hallmark house look more like a sitcom house than this one. It was so brightly lit. It felt like Steve Urkel could break into the place at any point. There were lots of men, but no dads. And that's because who's dead? Her
dad's dead.
Dad's dead.
Dad's dead. And they've taken the Christmas photo in the stadium every year since he died, Jodi.
There are so many countdowns in this movie. There's a countdown to being able to take the Christmas photo at the last game of the year. Something I have a hard time keeping up with in the Holiday Touchdown franchise is like the importance of the last game of December. They're always like,
right.
And like, can you tell me?
Which is not necessarily on Christmas and is also not the last game of the football season.
Right. It's not like the last game before the Super Bowl. I don't exactly know where that falls in sort of like we're in playoffs.
It's not even the
territory.
last game before the playoffs.
Okay. But it's always very important to these families who already live in the same hometown. So like they could always be going to Bills games together. But we find out in like a really emotional moment. I mean, the movie turns on a dime when the very pregnant sister is trying to induce labor with spicy foods.
Via hot sauce.
Via various wings. She has to eat the full wing with hot sauce. Her doctor sister is delivering her wings at like 8 a.m. with the peanut sticks. And she's trying to induce labor because she wants to be so far past being pregnant by the time they get to the last game of the year that they can. No. Not
the last game
right.
Before Christmas. I mean, maybe it would be the last game of the year.
But not for sure.
It's unclear. It depends
game.
Where Christmas falls.
The last game before Christmas is when they take their traditional both of their families together photo. This was two families, big part of Holiday Touchdown as well. Yeah. The Chiefs one. So in that moment, someone is like, man, how long have we been taking that picture? 20 years? And then Morgan's like 30 years. And then the mom, already weeping, is like, it was the Christmas after your father died. And it was like, ooh, only she remembers that? That's kind of tough.
You would think that would be part of the lore of the Christmas photo.
And
for
also,
everyone.
I know that grief is forever and we always experience it differently and it never goes away. We just grow around it, etc. The grief seems pretty fresh for 30 years ago.
Yeah. And only for one person.
Right. I had a hard time kind of keeping up with when the dad died. But what is more important to know is that their dad and the mom's husband passing away is the impetus for them moving in with Uncle Tommy, who then goes on to play a very vital role in the girls' lives. But actually, just in Morgan's life, it really never comes up with her sister.
Yeah. Yep.
Nora, I believe that you were on the text thread when producer Sasha discovered that Joey Pants was in this movie.
Indeed.
And she said, wait, Joey Pants is in this movie? And I'm here to tell you, Sasha, that Joey Pants isn't just in this movie. Joey Pants is this movie.
He's a central figure.
A huge part of the story of these two young, hot, single people in their 30s finally figuring out how to get together. And a huge part of me crying pretty steadily throughout the film.
Oh, wow. Okay. He was the reason I cried, but it took me a while to get there. But then Joey Pants, he unlocked my tear ducts.
That's right. It's just actually, it wasn't the whole film, but it was kind of like once it happened. And I can explain more later why I was in a particularly emotional state. But he is so, and of course, Joey Pants, who has a full name, but is mostly just known by Joey Pants, is from like Memento, The Sopranos, The Matrix. He is like the ultimate that guy. Last year, this movie had Ed Begley Jr. in it.
Yep.
These have some pull.
Yeah.
But within that home scene, she's with all these adults, like they're clearly like neighbors and kind of aunt and uncle like figures.
It's also confusing because this family lives across the street from his family, and they've always lived across the street from each other, and they do their decor together. Mm-hmm. But then also in her house, and you're never in their house, you're always in her house. Mm-hmm. And her house is like her and her mom, but also her uncle and her sister. So it's always
well, and she has her own house that we are very briefly in. She doesn't live in the family house anymore.
Oh, I'm going to be honest. I missed that.
It's not that you should have noticed. It's just that like she is an adult doctor and she doesn't live in that house anymore. But in the very standard construct, everyone's always over there by breakfast.
Yeah.
You got to get to the family house by breakfast and there's a spread.
Yeah.
Except Gabe gets there a little late. So like she's with all these people. And then this stud walks through the door. This like 6'5", doe-eyed, and he comes through the door, she walks straight over to him.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's her boyfriend who she's going to have to break up with. And then she's going to fall in love with the bartender.
Yes. Thank you.
I was at all times confused by where they fell in each other's lives, because even once we find out that they are lifelong family friends, they've known each other their whole lives, and they explain it as they were never single at the same time, or he explains it. She seems to have never known that she liked or loved him at all.
She seems to have never considered it, despite the fact that this man is a Buffalo 15. I don't mean that pejoratively to the people of Buffalo, but just based on what he looks like and what he does.
Oh,
This is not a person who struggles to get a date. This is not a person whose lived experience should imbue them with anything other than the romantic confidence of a 20-something Leo DiCaprio. It is inexplicable that this would be a person
the confidence of a current Leo DiCaprio somehow. But I
Somehow,
totally
some
agree.
way.
The villain of this movie is self-doubt and self-preservation. There is no other adversary. There is no other challenge except these people getting past themselves. And he has
there's some
little to get past.
The villain of this movie is slightly degraded handwriting over time. The villain of this movie is having to do a little bit of sleuthing using the postal system.
Well, those are mysteries and clues. I wouldn't say they're intentionally villainous.
Sure. But by which I mean there is no villain of this movie.
It is as usual themselves.
There are so few obstacles in front of these people.
Her continuing to blink into his face every time he's like, hey, Morgan, can I talk to you about something? If anyone out there is listening, if you have a straight male best friend who keeps saying, hey, Nora, could I talk to you about something real quick? He's in love with you.
When you're shopping for Christmas trees, when you're at the Christmas tree farm.
Mm-hmm. When you're at the Christmas tree farm, when he's
giving you his coat.
When he's giving you his coat and he is so much taller than you that he is looking dead down into your eyes, which really is the only time that they have a sort of connection like that. Other than that, but it's so obvious, they're always sitting so close to each other. They're often sitting on a couch talking to Joey Pants, and their arms will be on the back of the couch on top of each other's arms. If myself and a platonic guy friend were sitting on a couch, hip to hip, arm over arm, I might have started to have some questions.
There's no way that these two people in any sort of real experience haven't at one point or another been out with some friends, had 2.5 drinks, and ... as they say in Mamma Mia.
They didn't try an Arbor Mist in high school. They didn't, didn't accidentally get a little tipsy when they were young and not so worried about ruining the friendship.
Totally.
But actually, they it's almost like they added something throughout the filming of the movie, because they don't even start calling each other best friends until 3/4 of the way through the movie. That's not really, it's like they become best friends during the movie.
Well, it's because they're constantly needing to find reasons why it would be even remotely difficult for them to confess interest to each other. And
it really feels like the characters are finding the reasons, but the movie is also finding the reasons in real time. Because it doesn't start out that way. And it starts out, okay, I could never figure this out. Tell me if you could. How long do you think she's been back in Buffalo?
I've simply no idea. Long, it has to be years.
Years?
Yes, because she has traditions at the hospital.
But they never talk about the way they've been spending their time together before this Christmas weekend. They just start literally spending 16 hours a day together. And there's no evident shared recent history.
Right. Well, right.
It's a little too much
because
to
a couple
ask, and I
times people
understand.
say, like, oh, you've been spending a lot of time with Gabe recently, which implies that in the past they were not doing so. But she, at the hospital, she is known for putting together Christmas card crafts time.
That's right.
CCCT. And that implies to me that at minimum she's had one Christmas there in the past. But I think to like establish a tradition like this, like how many years we're 3 years into Bingemas?
Yes. 2 podcast years, 1 editorial year. Things can get confusing quickly. I get it.
Yeah. So I think she probably she needed her editorial year first to get off the ground. And then maybe she had 1 podcast year and now
and it was
she's
smaller. And now she's supersized her Gabe time.
Now she's supersized her Gabe time and her CCCT time. So I think that she has been back for at least 2 going on 3 years.
Well, and in fact, Gabe has supersized her CCCT time and experience because, as before mentioned, Gabe is the VP of Stadium Development for the Bills. I don't demand at all that these characters have ostensible, believable careers. But I do like to evaluate how ostensible and believable they are. And I sort of feel like I don't have the background to evaluate if this 38-year-old model could be the VP of Stadium Development for the giant $1 billion new Bills stadium. But the way they keep referencing his job and how it works as the VP of Stadium Development is they keep being like, it's so crazy that you're building the new stadium. As though he is building it brick by bricks like the pyramids.
Yeah.
What level of sort of like civil engineering background does Gabe need to have? And do you think he has it?
He definitely does not seem to have it because his building prowess in a hands-on sense seems to mostly be defined by having been pretty good at woodshop.
And having successfully built a stool is the only thing we hear of any like construction or engineering background.
But he nailed that stool.
Oh, yeah. And she nailed that science.
Yeah.
In science class.
My understanding of what a VP of Stadium Development's job would be is that it would have more to do actually with like dealing with government officials and sort of lobbying for various permits than with the actual architecture and construction. Now, he doesn't seem to have a lot of fluency in that area either. Something that is canon to the character of Gabe is that everyone knows he hates asking for favors at work.
He does.
This is something that everyone knows.
For favors, and he's never asked for one. And by the end of this film, he will have asked for some pretty big ones.
He will have asked for so many favors. But this is so well known about Gabe that the head coach of the team is like, oh, yeah, Gabe from Stadium Development who hates asking for favors.
He sees him. He says, Gabe, you never ask for favors.
You're never asking for favors, Gabe.
I'm trying to think of if I'm someone who asks for, I don't think I ask for things. I don't think I'm like, is there a person in my life who I could contextualize that like that? Because, and I think the implication is that they never ask for help. This is a movie made entirely of Enneagram 2s who are always giving. And I know that was a reference point for the millennial writers who I keep referencing because by the time we talked about anxious attachment types, numerology, what was it? There was a lot more like self-preservation.
Yeah.
I was like, who wrote this movie? I know it's not the person who wrote the Chiefs movie.
Yep.
And it was not.
Yeah.
It's a former Disney Channel star, Vanessa Morano, also of a Nepo baby sibling. She's just a sibling. There are 2 Morano sisters.
Yeah.
And former Nickelodeon star, Danielle Morrow, which is a different last name. I'm saying them sort of the same. And I believe this is for both of them, their first writing credit. So a couple of child actors just got together and wrote this movie with all of these feelings.
Right. And applied everything that they know about attachment styles and the various ways that millennials have been taught to process their emotions. What I was going to say about Gabe vis-a-vis favors is that, and now I think that these two things can coexist because it may just be that he specifically does not ask favors of the Bills and like of Bills team members or officials.
Right.
My understanding of what the VP of stadium development would do would be that job is actually almost constantly asking for favors. Like 90% of that job is like going to City Hall and taking someone out to lunch and being like, hey, so
we gotta get this snow melter in here. And
we know
it requires
that the snow melter
gas.
didn't get approved for the old stadium or for this building, but we really think that the Bills are a part of this community and they deserve to have the snow melter. And that would be like 98% of that job.
It seems like 98% of Gabe's job is like wearing Carhartt that suggests that you could be doing construction.
While not doing construction. And doing a lot of walk-in talks with Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Bills, who, by the way, I do need to ask you a question about Sean McDermott and like things that crossed your plate.
Okay.
Do you know anything about Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Bills, and particularly like a specific story that he's a little bit infamous for?
I don't think so. And at the time I saw him come on screen, I was so sure that I knew his name. And now I can't remember what name I was thinking, but I was like, wow, look at me go. I know that guy's name. I know the Bills coach's name. And then I looked up Bills coach and I wasn't anywhere close. So no, I don't know a specific story associated with him.
Okay. So this is just a detour, but I just sort of need you to know this information. A couple years ago, there was a reporter, Tyler Dunn, who covers the Bills very well. And he wrote this sort of multi-part series about things that were going on behind the scenes. And a lot of it was sort of questioning of Sean McDermott's leadership. And there were a lot of anecdotes about like things that he's done that have rubbed people the wrong way or not. And, not all of it was critical, but it was a deep look at kind of the state of his tenure. But there was a particular anecdote that came out of that reporting that was really striking. And that is that at training camp, I believe this was in 2021, he was trying to make a speech about teamwork, like effective teamwork to the team.
A lot of those kinds of speeches in this movie.
Yeah, although none quite like this. Do you want to even venture to guess what historical event from this century he used as an example of a time that people worked together effectively to achieve a common goal?
The Vietnam War, also referenced in this movie?
From this century.
Oh.
Jodi, it was 9/11.
It was on the tip of my tongue. And then I was like, Jodi, don't bring up 9/11.
It was 9/11.
Jodi, Sean, don't bring up 9/11.
Sean, don't bring up 9/11. Why'd you bring up 9/11? He really did.
He's not wrong.
No, that's actually a fair point. But you know that old drill tweet that's like, re-ISIS? Like, I regret my previous post. Under no circumstances do you have to hand it to them. He did that. He did the drill tweet at the team meeting. And it wasn't like I loved 9/11. It was just like, those hijackers, they really had a plan. And
That's what he meant?
Yeah, he was like, I
thought you meant people worked together in the aftermath of 9/11.
No! That's not what it was. That's the crazy part. That wasn't on you. That was on me. But also on him, because you would never assume that
I take back what I said about he's not wrong. He's not wrong, but...
No, he was like the people on the plane. They had a plan.
That's nuts.
They were really well coordinated.
I really would not see that coming from his understated performance in this film.
He was like, and he asked some of the people on the team to like name adversity that they had. Like, he was like, what tactics do you think they used to come together? And then he said, what do you think their biggest obstacle was? And he like made players answer. And one of them was like, the TSA.
Yeah.
And it was a weird meeting. That was the reporting, is that it was a weird meeting. So anyway, that's who Gabe, who never asks for favors until he does, was like casually striding down the hallways with.
I feel like that's like when in Pilates, they're like, this one's just for coordination. Like, this isn't exercise. We're just doing this for your brain.
This is your balance.
This was like just him doing something where he was like, I want you to rub your belly in the top of your head and think about what the hijackers were facing on 9/11.
He wasn't like, again, in fairness, he wasn't like, and it was a good thing they did.
No, it was just a practice in teamwork. And, you know, the Bills are the enemy to someone.
It's just a very strange example. So anyway, I just needed to, I needed to impart that information to you.
Thank you. That really colors the film differently. I'm thinking a lot of things right now. And less so about Gabe's job, which really distracted me for the entire movie. I do want to say that the actual vice president of stadium development for the Buffalo Bills currently, as they build the new stadium coming to you in 2026, is John Polka III. And he looks pretty young.
Polka.
Yeah. And somehow he simply got LinkedIn.com/Polka. He's the number one polka, but he clearly has, prior to going to the Bills, 15 years of experience in like construction and civil engineer project management. And I just don't know if Gabe has that. When Gabe is doing one of the walk and talks, not with Sean, I'm sure that was a much more complicated walk and talk. He's just with kind of an extra. It's like one of the only times we see him doing his job. And he simply looks down at a clipboard and says, looks like we're still on schedule, which is great.
Perfect.
It's like, if you've ever renovated anything, you know that nothing's on schedule.
Nothing has ever been on schedule in the history of any renovation.
He is creating a new NFL stadium, and it looks like everything's on schedule. Awesome job, you guys. So he actually has plenty of time to get into a little mystery with the love of his life and longtime best friend, Morgan. And that mystery comes when Uncle Tommy, a.k.a. Pants, a.k.a. Joey Pants, he doesn't even receive it. Somehow no one in this family has ever discovered this super secret. And Morgan just discovers it by being intercepting a package for Uncle Tommy with no return address, which she thinks is kind of strange. She hands it to him. He does not open it in private or secret. He opens it and he says, oh, it's another ornament from my anonymous Christmas gift giver. And she's like, hey, QQ, what's going on here?
What do you mean?
And Uncle Tommy hasn't just been receiving anonymous Christmas ornaments for the last 50 or 60 years. He tells us via what has now become a franchise staple, which is a really weird flashback.
Yeah.
You remember those flashbacks from the last one?
Yeah.
They use less AI this time, which is appreciated. They don't do anything weird to Ed Begley Jr.'s face. They just cast a younger actor. And we find out that when Uncle Tommy was drafted, he was the eldest child. His mother was a single mother. He had been contributing to the household income. So when he was drafted, his family was really in dire straits while he was away. And someone started anonymously sending them gifts and cash money, as he says.
Groceries.
I do like that he's like an old man who has certain sort of like Gen Z phrases or it's actually more like Gen X phrases that he's picked up, like cash money. Later, he says something that is so slang. Oh, now I can't remember, but they're getting cash money. They're getting food, deliveries, gifts. And when he comes back, the sort of like heft of these gifts is not as much. But someone continues to send something every Christmas, a trinket or an ornament or a figurine. He unveils this information not at all like he's been keeping it a secret for 70 years.
Yep.
And Morgan's floored. Obviously, Gabe is also there basically sitting in her lap. And when Uncle Tommy walks away, he cannot even, he's not even out of earshot. And they're like, we got to do something about this. They're like, this seems like a great way to spend a lot of time together. What's the first thing that they do? How do they first start investigating?
Well, first they go to the post office and they ask the post office to track the mail that famously has no return address.
I did old young gun VP of stadium development being like, with technology these days, this is going to be no problem.
Today's technology can do anything.
Later, we see Uncle Tommy turn on the house Christmas lights with a phone. So I think he understands the iOS system. So they just go to the post office famously with the Times and ask, where'd this package come from? They say, get out of my face, kids. And then Uncle Tommy once again reveals a huge piece of information that he still has all of these gifts in a box that he packed away because it's a big deal to Morgan that when she and her sister and her mom moved into Uncle Tommy's house, that really changed his life.
And he had to make room for her Barbies. So he packed his things away.
He never got married. He never had children of his own. These don't seem to be complaints that he has, but they are burdens, emotional burdens that Morgan is taking on.
Morgan shoulders.
Written by millennial women, probably eldest sisters. So he shows them all the gifts. And somehow from looking at all the gifts, they're like, wow, there is only one thing in here that isn't Bill's related. And for some reason, that one thing has a sticker on the bottom from the local,
Fime and Dime.
This and that store, the local Fime and Dime. And they go that the expectations on these people, they go there they literally say when they're going, maybe they'll have track of these receipts. If anyone will, it's called Vittles
or Vintners?
Vintner? No. If anywhere, Vittles will. And Nora, honest to God, they walk in there. Mrs. Claus receives them. A woman I spotted as Mrs. Claus from a mile away.
Oh, see, that's why you're the expert.
It could be Mrs.
Who's
Claus.
this kooky old lady who works at the store?
Who's this Cindy with a Y and an I in places you wouldn't begin to imagine? It's Mrs. Claus. She does not help them, though. She doesn't have the giving nature of your average Mrs. Claus. But she does tell them that they keep all of the original receipts in the attic of the shop. And then she takes them up there. She flips a giant electricity switch. And what should come to life but basically Santa's workshop, a magical attic full of twinkle lights and Christmas gifts and 70 cardboard boxes of old receipts.
Unmarked shoe boxes.
Missed different sizes. But they've kept every single one. And this turns the movie down a path of just looking at receipts for a while.
You know what I love is that, so they look at receipts for a while. There's, without skipping ahead too much,
crazy.
When this doesn't fail, but leads them to another clue that leads them to a house, an address. Mm-hmm. When they are faced with the task of sorting through, again, dozens upon dozens of completely disorganized, unmarked boxes of receipts, they are
looking for a serial number. They are looking for a 20-digit
They don't have
number.
A name. They don't have it. They are so much less daunted by this than they are later in this task when they are faced with the need to just look up ownership records of a house.
They arrive at a home, and who should open the door but yet another Bills player that I do not know.
Dawson Knox.
He was evidently a football player by his sheer size.
Yep.
There are a lot of former and current, well, not that many. There are several former and current Bills players in this movie. One opens the door and they're like, "Aw, nuts. You haven't lived here since 1970. We were hoping the original owner would be here." And then they walk down the driveway and she literally is like, well, I don't know where we go from here.
I don't know what we could possibly do. We couldn't ask him who he bought the house from or anything.
You could probably find this on Zillow.
This is publicly available information.
This is the easiest thing you've faced yet. You went to med school.
This is so much easier than the receipts, guys.
But I think they're kind of less interested because it promises them to be able to spend less close, intimate time in a twinkle-lit place together. Ultimately, he does just look up the people who he goes to City Hall, something you're suggesting he might have to do a lot as the VP of Stadium Sciences.
This is a person, again, who I think by trade should know their way around local government bureaucracy.
Yeah, even like pulling up some old, prints of the house. Like I imagine pulling up documents is a big part of his job. And he does do it. He does his job.
Yes, they do eventually do it.
And they find several owners throughout the 70s. And I'm just kind of like, you guys, you have the receipt. You know what date this was purchased. Just look at the actual one, but they can't figure it out. They can't figure it out. She even goes so far as kind of like floating the names to Uncle Tommy, and he doesn't recognize any of them. And once again, the only thing that propels them forward is just looking at a scrapbook. There's so much scrapbooking in this movie, a Hallmark staple, and he is just always over at that house, and they are just picking up a scrapbook, and these scrapbooks are chaos because they'll be looking at a photo of themselves from elementary school, and then we're over in 1970 with Uncle Tommy and an unnamed woman.
And somehow this has never come up, even though they're clearly putting in contemporary photos mixed in with these artifacts year after year.
This family is honestly really chaotic. And let me tell you, the second most distracting thing other than his job to me was like the sheerly ludicrous idea that there would be two best friend families, that they would have a single, gorgeous, successful daughter, everybody seeming pretty emotionally sound, mentally sound, and a single, gorgeous, Bill's Mafia successful son on the other side, and that this family would not constantly be like, hey, do you think you guys should date each other? Hey, do you think you're going to date each other? Hey, do you want to date each other? Nobody in the family even brings it up until like 3/4 of the way through the movie.
It's also like there's no personality trait that would in theory make them at odds with each other.
Opposites.
Like they're not opposites at all. They are the same person, actually. They have the same upbringing. They seem to have the same value system. They want to live the same life. They are single, attractive, successful people.
They are both deeply generous. Their greatest flaw is how generous they are.
Yes.
With their time and their talents.
There is nothing keeping these people apart.
Nothing. They're like the same amount of funny, which is not very, but pleasant. I was curious about Matthew Daddario's casting. I couldn't ever really make heads or tails of his performance. I wondered if he has
eyeballs.
It's sort of Josh Allen-esque in that way. And I know them's big words if anyone's a Bills fan out there.
I'm not sure I can abide
but
this.
he's sort of a like quiet by nature voice, never a 0, never a 10, like always a 5 on the emoting scale, likes this much more gregarious gal. And mostly it's the doe eyes.
Yeah, the doe eyes is really doing a lot of work there. I think of Josh Allen as actually like not necessarily in his personal affectations getting to an emotional 10, but he plays the game of football at an emotional 10.
Right.
At every turn.
Okay.
And I think that's a big part of.
But how about when we saw Gabe give some of those rousing speeches? Okay, Nora, I'm going to be honest.
Those rousing speeches he's so known for.
I quite liked the one where for some reason he's giving a rousing speech before the final game before Christmas. They're not going to the new stadium. It's not even the last game in the old stadium.
Yeah.
But he's giving a rousing speech to the staff that are working on the new stadium. And we find out that he is a stadium construction nepo baby. His grandfather worked on actually building with his hands, not his mind, the original Highmark Stadium. And when Gabe talked about like how much it meant to him walking into the stadium and knowing that his grandfather helped build it, and that they can all know that in like the future, their children and grandchildren will have that feeling that they worked on the new Highmark Stadium. I thought that was really nice. I felt Josh Allen and God in the room at that moment.
I'm looking up. Oh, yeah. New York taxpayers will pay $850 million of the construction cost, with $600 million coming from New York State and $250 million coming from.
You think that's what they're going to be thinking about when they walk into the new Highmark Stadium?
Well, no. What I was going to say is like I'm siphoned off from being able to have that relationship with it, because I think of most football new stadium construction projects as just sort of to their core. Obscene wastes of public money.
Right. You don't think they need the snow melting technology?
I don't think they need the snow melting technology, but also if they want it, NFL owners and the NFL in general are rich enough to pay for it themselves, but they use threats of relocating teams to extract it from these municipalities.
Which Uncle Pants himself says was a feeling at the time of the building of the old Highmark Stadium when it was new, is that everyone was so worried that the Bills would leave Buffalo. And that's a big part of why they, came back together as a Bills Mafia or something.
Yeah. Yeah. The old stadium is also really cute, and it's just like it's an environment that doesn't really exist in the NFL anymore. It feels more like a college stadium. And I think the new one is probably not, I'm not going to find it as cute. So, Gabe, I got a little issue with your vocation, buddy, but that's okay.
Well, he also has an issue with his vacation. He doesn't spend a lot of time doing it, but he does finally start cashing in those favors. He asks for a bunch of Bills players to come to CCCT. And that's, a good time at the hospital. There were children referencing certain players being their favorite football players, and I just wondered would that be that child's favorite football player?
Well, quite possibly, because Damar Hamlin kind of legally died for a few seconds. He's that guy.
Him.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, he's my favorite football player. So yeah, huge news from Holiday Touchdown.
Yeah. He's also, according to Holiday Touchdown, incredible at arts and crafts.
Oh, yeah. And a big part of the Bills players, past and present, role in this movie is to tell Gabe that he is an idiot and that it is so obvious that he is in love with Madison and that he needs to lock this down. I liked it too. I thought
it was funny.
The recurring bit. And then when he walks away from the Coach Sean is like, wow, Damar Hamlin was right. He is obsessed with her.
He is obsessed with her.
His eyes light up. Sort of.
And you know what that reminds me of is how those 9/11 hijackers, no, just kidding,
really worked together as a team, really facing a lot of adversity.
It's so weird he did that. I can't stop bringing it up.
There's not much magic in this movie at all, which is is there? Did you observe any magic?
There's just Santa Claus, who I need to rely on your expertise here. Am I to believe that that's Santa, like real Santa Claus, or is that a Buffalo area Santa performing his duties?
Well, Nora, before we got on mic, we were just barely chit-chatting. We were saving all the good stuff. But you said you remembered Tyler Hines. I said, did you remember Santa? And you were like from my childhood? I was like, no, from the last movie. This is the same Santa.
Santa Claus? Like Saint Nick?
This is the
from Christmas.
This is the same Santa, and I remember him because he was so weird in the last one. Not like
really
not the
weird
performance,
Santa.
more the way that it was written. He's a very convincing Santa, but he had that magic hat last time, and he kept disappearing stuff and creating misunderstandings, which Santa does from time to time in these films. In this movie, he's just Santa, and he's kind of just bullying Gabe.
Yeah,
He's kind of
occasionally he seems to sort of know a piece of information.
Yeah, there's
he's like, ho, 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 I'm going not to Abbott Road, but Abbotsfield Place.
I actually thought he revealed that completely by accident. I did not believe that to be magic.
Okay, so do you think that this is like a guy who lives in Buffalo who's dressing up as Santa, or do you think that that is the Santa Claus?
I think no one's ever seen that man and Santa in the same room, and I think no one's ever seen that man like in his civilian skivvies in Buffalo.
Okay.
I believe that is Santa. Cindy is Mrs. Claus, and by the end, they are toasting candy canes, watching all the love that they've created.
Like, Cindy is a person who exists.
Cindy has a day job.
Yeah.
Santa's day job is Santa.
So you're telling me that Santa and Mrs. Claus are long distance?
I think that he really has the elves doing everything now, and he is not creating any gifts. He is creating mischief.
Wow. So he's like remote boss who doesn't come into the office.
Oh, he's full Jeff Bezos. And that is how I think about that Santa. And what he does is nothing. He really does not create any circumstances for them to get together, except just continuing to show up. The only thing that gets them together is them not overcoming their emotions exactly, but solving the big mystery of that the young woman in the scrapbook photo, her name is Mia, and Santa does ultimately tell them that he is going to a party on Abbottville Road. And they have been looking at Abbott Road, and they realize that some of the original receipt was erased. And so they take themselves to the right address, and who should open the door but Mia, who they recognize on site.
Her immediately.
Who they recognize 60 years later on site. There is another this was written by millennials part of this movie where these Hallmark films rarely acknowledge social media. And when they can't find Mia, they have a sort of mob boss-like scene where they go to their friend and ask her to find someone. And I have a friend like that.
Yeah. She says she's the Michelangelo of social media stalking.
And if I had to kiss her ring, I would, because sometimes I need her to find someone, and I'm literally a journalist, but she's way better at that than me.
Why today, on this, the day before the last Christmas game at Hallmark?
Because we know what you're capable of.
Oh, it's fabulous. I loved her.
So they recognize her on site. Nora, this is when I tell you that while I was watching this movie, I was wearing a collagen face mask. One of those masks that you put on in a gel form and then it dries on your face. And I can't tell you if my highs and lows emotional response to this scene was because my face was sort of paralyzed and that made me feel my feelings even deeper, or if I had just gotten to this place. But when Mia says, when Morgan is just reaching a breaking point, she's like, why? You've got to help me understand. Why were you doing this anonymously? And if you didn't want him to know, why did you keep sending the presents? Gabe, across the room on another couch, he is recognizing himself. He is looking in a mirror and he is putting all the pieces together. And he looks up with those doe eyes and he says, because you were in love with him. And Mia gasps. And I broke into a laughter that no other movie has caused. And this is not a funny movie.
Did you crack the face mask?
The face mask starts cracking. So then I get into kind of a panic. It's sort of a panic
laugh.
Right,
because you're now suddenly picturing yourself picking off little bits of face mask over the course of the next 2 weeks of your life.
I don't know what happened. I felt like I understood what it would be to be a fully Botoxed Real Housewife. I couldn't move anything. I laughed so hard. I cracked my face mask. And then when she says, I loved him my whole life, I burst into tears. And I had to remove the bottom of the face mask. I kept on the top, which I later cried off during the emotional revelation when they finally make it to the last football game before Christmas. Gabe, oh wait, no, maybe I took off the top half of the face mask. When Gabe finally, inspired by Mia, not by her bravery, but by her shame and by the loneliness she has lived with her whole life by never confessing her love to Uncle Pants, Gabe is so inspired that he confesses his love to Morgan, who says, I gotta take a walk.
Yeah. She's like, I gotta go.
And we have felt like this whole time, and she has been kind of saying that she is now considering him as a prospect, but she doesn't want to ruin the friendship. I thought he gave her a pretty nice speech.
I agree. I totally agree.
He does a callback. He brings back her talking about the first date with the guy. And she was like, I need someone who likes that I scream, who likes that I jump on tables. And he's like, Morgan, I like that you scream. I like that you jump on tables. I think you're funny. I think you're smart. I think you're all these things. This is his Josh Allen on the field moment.
Yeah.
This is when he's really getting amped up.
He's putting it all out there.
Putting it all on the field. He puts it all on the field. And she says,
she's also like, she's giving him the answers to the text.
Time out. I'm going to take a walk. And then Nora, after the love confession, they don't talk about this again for like
days.
A week. Like days. I don't know exactly when the pre-Christmas game was, but let's say it was December 20th. A lot of things happen at the game. He takes Uncle Pants out on the field where we already know Mia's going to be for an army. It's something.
So yeah, this is the thing that's always happening at football games. They're
and
always
in these movies.
Yeah, they're taking a service member and they're saluting them. And that's
her
a big part of what we do.
Is a service member, and Mia was never supposed to be out on the field at all. Gabe arranges not only for Mia to be out on the field, and apparently talks to her niece and is like, I know that this is your moment, but could it be your great aunt's moment instead?
Could we make this not about you?
Thank you for your service. But actually, she's been sending apples to this family for like 60 years. She's been sending them the baskets from Little Women for 60 years. They've been flushed with limes, and that service is actually much greater. So he brings me on the field. Then he brings Uncle Pants on the field. And Uncle Pants gives, actually, this is when I cried the bottom half of my face at Mask
Same.
Off. A very lovely speech about like what she did for his family and how meaningful it is. Anytime that Joey Pants is on screen, he is bringing a completely different energy to this movie.
Totally. But I will still say and like, this is a weird thing that happens to me actually, like at football events in general sometimes is like, I think it's really meaningful to serve your country, but like, I would say that my feelings about the military in general are complicated at best.
Mm-hmm.
There is something where like, I'll go to a game and then there's like in New York, not to keep bringing up 9/11, but like around 9/11.
Never forget.
Here, there's always like a game where, you know, the Giants coach is wearing like an FDNY cap. And there's some weird like vestigial strain of neoconservatism that like kicks inside of me a little bit.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he walked onto that field and he saluted
veteran.
her.
Yep.
Yes. And he saluted her with gusto.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I'll be honest, I didn't think they were going to get me. And then by George, they got me, girls.
I didn't think they were going to get me in a way that wasn't face paralysis related. And then they got me. And
They
then,
got me.
But what's crazy is at that point, there are like 5 minutes in the movie left. And I was like, nobody said that they love each other, except that after an entire stadium of people have watched Uncle Tommy give this like moving speech about how this woman, Mia, has been like an anonymous benefactor and that she has provided this service. He then kisses her on the mouth. And I just wondered if anyone was prepared for that. They then kind of go off mic. He sort of takes his mic offside and he's like, I've been in love with you for 70 years. And she's like, same. And then they passionately mouth kiss. And I think the whole audience was kind of like,
No, that would be like, again, this is the first part of that experience is something that happens at like most football games. Can you imagine if during the salute to service tribute, there was like a confession of a love that has waited decades to be realized and then passionate mouth kissing on the field?
I would have to leave the stadium, much like Morgan's entire family does when Chekhov's fetus finally drops and the baby that we have known, there's not a precocious child in this movie. There is a baby that we know is coming, baby Jessica.
Baby Jessica.
And at some point, instead of trying to bring on labor, the sister starts to try to delay labor. She cannot delay it long enough. She goes into labor at the game. She should not have been there. Hate to shame an expecting mother, but
no.
Also, she was planning to be there like 2 days postpartum. She had I don't know what her plan was. Bill's Mafia is wild. So the whole family leaves to have this baby. They don't get their photo. Morgan and Gabe do not catch up vis-a-vis if she is in love with him. The next thing we see is Christmas Day, where we find Mia and Uncle Tommy sitting in each other's laps.
Yep.
And Gabe and Morgan on different couches for the first time ever. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So he calls in one more favor. And he takes them to the old, except still current, stadium to take the photo that they missed taking. And they can't believe it. And I'm like, you guys, he has a very high-powered job at this
like he can actually
franchise.
Get you there.
This is kind of a no-problem situation for him. But they are marveled. And finally, he stops Morgan in the hall and he's like, hey, just kind of want to do a vibe check. How we doing?
Like, backtrack and touch back in on our conversation.
I really liked Morgan because I liked this performance and the, just general like jolly nature. She's kind of a problem.
I love that she never had to be at her job.
No. And the only time she was there, it was voluntary.
It was voluntary.
She did say the hospital had given her a few days off.
Right. Yeah.
So that she could fall in love. And she did, and she does. And she kisses him, doesn't give a big speech or say anything great about him, just says she also loves him, kisses him, and then they go play some flag football.
Naturally.
And it's beautiful. And there were I would say that the meaning of Christmas, as stated by the film, was another great Uncle Pants line. That's the thing about change. We worry so much about what we might lose and not enough about what we might gain by taking a chance.
Oh, wow. I thought it was to ask for favors at work.
It is also that. Because literally it applies, Nora. This applies to the Buffalo Bills and their intrepid faith in themselves. And this applies to us. Asking for favors at work because we don't need to worry about what we'll lose. We only need to think about what we'll gain.
What we might gain.
And this is a lesson for millennial women as well. That's really what came through in the film. Anything else you need to touch down on as a part of the Holiday Touchdown franchise?
Can I tell you that like 20 minutes into this film, because you were very wise and zero in on the wardrobe choices and the relative modesty of them. And like 20 minutes in, I was like, wow, I haven't seen a single collarbone.
Oh, and I mean, we're in
counting.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Right. So we're going to be snug and we're covered up. The final collarbone count was truly zero. Not a single collarbone shown in this entire film. And I saw her elbows once.
Because the predominant thing that she is wearing when not in a coat is a sweater vest over a turtleneck. In a sort of like, the gals from Nobody Wants This sort of nature. She is
right.
Often like, she's like, I could be exposing my arms, but I won't. I'll put a turtleneck under it.
I won't be.
But I won't.
I simply won't be.
And
the other...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, please.
No, I was just wardrobe related. It is difficult to pull off those Buffalo Bills colors and clothing. And everyone's doing their best.
Everyone's doing their best.
They did a good
job for the most part.
the colors aren't difficult. It's the, I guess, sort of tiger stripe motif that they go with a lot.
Zubaz.
That stuff. They're putting it in all of like her hair clips so that she doesn't actually have to wear it.
Yeah. So she doesn't have to wear the full onesie.
Yeah.
Like, that is one, I think, factual misstep, is that at least one person in their group would have been wearing a Zubaz onesie to the game. Another thing that stood out to me, there are so many reindeer in Buffalo around Christmas time, as demonstrated by this movie. I'm not saying I know that to be false. I'm just curious about it.
Buffalo listeners, weigh in, DM us at We're Obsessed Pod. We got to know what's going on with these reindeer. Because when they go to pick
I
out...
understand that there's probably in any, it's a northern city. There's probably likely to be one Christmas tree farm or sort of children's Christmas petting zoo situation where you might have an errant reindeer or two or three. There seem to also be reindeer in the town square, at the Bills tailgates, I think. And I want to know more.
And that tailgate was just at their house.
Yeah.
They were tailgating at their house where there was maybe a live reindeer. At that Christmas tree farm, they play a whimsical little game where she's like, just close your eyes, spin around, and point to find a Christmas tree. He spins around a alleged Christmas tree farm with more reindeer than Christmas trees. I was like, there's no chance he's going to find there were no Christmas trees there. It was all market and festival.
No Christmas trees, but also in the world of the film, this is a Christmas tree farm that has at least a half dozen different varietals. That's not my Christmas tree farm experience.
Well,
like there's one type of tree that they're growing, and then you go through and you pick the tree that you like, but you're not picking like a Virginia pine versus a Douglas fir versus right?
Well, they were also, for the record, picking an outdoor Christmas tree for their outdoor display. So they're just living in a different world than you and I, Nora. They're living in Buffalo. They're living in Bill's Mafia. And that is the fake country that this movie takes place in.
Bill's country.
I gotta say, I liked it. To me, it was an improvement on the franchise in some ways and in not others. But I really liked following the Bills.
Yeah, no, the Bills are, like, I hate to say that it can't get better than this, but the Bills are the most romantic team, certainly in the NFL, and they're up there, I think, in sports.
Yeah.
And that made for, I think, a really nice backdrop for these people who, again, had literally nothing keeping them apart, but I'm happy they're together now.
My hope is that next year they don't choose another football team, but they choose another sport. And that we just, sidle on over to the NBA and see what's going on with their stadium construction executives.
Holiday slam dunk.
I can't wait.
Nora. New Orleans.
Nope. No more. Don't write the movie for free on the pod. We're going to write it offline.
It's just some of the NBA teams have funny names.
That's true. Nora,
watch this space.
Thank you. Watch this space. Watch the We're Obsessed Pod Instagram space where we are dropping the calendar for the movies that we're covering in case you want to watch in advance, and where we'll be dropping some fun social media coverage. And tune in back here for the next day of Bingemas. Thank you to Nora. Thank you to Sasha and Ashleigh and Belle. We will see you back here. Bye.